Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Seward, and I've been helping coordinate the 2020 Abhidhamma study retreat. I want to give a warm welcome to everyone. We have people joining us from not only all over the United States, but also all over the world. And we're really pleased to have everyone here. And we know this is going to be a wonderful experience for all. We're going to have a brief orientation to the retreat before I turn it over to Bhikkhu Bodhi. So in this orientation, we're going to go over some of the details pertaining to Zoom. We'll take a look at how the schedule is set up. We'll discuss the breakout groups, and we'll look at, we'll talk a little bit about YouTube and the streaming. Okay. So Zoom, video. I'm on video now. I would like the participants to leave your video off unless you are asking a question. And the reason for that is because people have different bandwidths on their internet service. And so if everyone has their video on, for some users, it can really slow things down. So when you're not speaking, keep your video off, please. Muting and unmuting. All participants by default are muted, and you won't be able to unmute yourself unless you're invited to do so. And because of that, if you have any technical problems, you want to email this email address here, because you won't be able to send anything in a chat. You're muted, the chat's off. So if anything comes up, please send us an email here. During some portions of the retreat, Bhikkhu Bodhi will ask if there are any questions. Use the raise your hand feature. The way you do that is you go into the participants button. So click on the participants button. You'll see the list come up. You'll be at the top. And right there, you'll see the ability to raise your hand. There might be some other ways to do it within Zoom. If you know about those, that's great. So raise your hand when you have a question, and then one of the volunteers managing Zoom will unmute you. You can ask your question, you can turn on your video, and then you'll be muted again once you're done with your question. Please do not raise your hand for technical problems. We don't want to interrupt the retreat to deal with that kind of thing. That's what the email is for. So here's what the schedule looks like. This is just a sample. I sent this to all of you as a link in your email. If you didn't get it, please send an email to the tech support email address. And what I want to point out here is that the sections in green are Zoom meetings. The sections in white are not Zoom meetings. Those are your meals, your personal practice, etc. The way Zoom is set up is each day of the retreat is one long Zoom meeting. So if you see the details of the Zoom meeting, it says like 6 a.m. or something to 9 at night. But the meeting will only be active during these highlighted sections. So you don't need to be logged into the meeting for the whole weekend. Just log in a few minutes before each section begins. So log in a little bit before 9:20 tomorrow, and then again a little before 1:30 tomorrow, etc. Okay, breakout groups. On Saturday and Sunday, there will be some breakout groups. These are a chance for you to discuss the material and ask questions. You'll all be assigned to a breakout room. Each breakout room will have 1 or 2 facilitators with names formatted like this: Abhi support, and then a number and their name. So those are the people who will be guiding you through the breakout sessions. And they're not necessarily experts on Abhidhamma. Their role is to facilitate the conversation, although we actually do have one facilitator who is an expert on Abhidhamma. So the way the breakout rooms will work is you'll be invited to ask questions, and the facilitator will gather up questions, and afterwards there'll be a meeting with Bhikkhu Bodhi where the facilitators will share 2 to 3 questions from their group. So we can't guarantee that your question will be shared with the larger group, but please do share your questions with the facilitators. Also, if you have time within the breakout groups, you can discuss the questions that you brought up, other aspects of what you've been learning or your practice. The sort of golden rule for the breakout rooms is that all comments and questions should be respectful of all retreat participants. As I mentioned, we have people from all different countries, all different cultures, languages here, and we want to create a space that's respectful for all and where everyone feels comfortable. I don't anticipate that this is going to be a problem, but I do want to set the expectation that all comments will be respectful and questions. Okay, YouTube. So we will be streaming on YouTube live during any sections when Bhikkhu Bodhi has invited questions. If you don't want your face to show up on YouTube live, don't activate your video. We may invite you to activate your video, but you don't have to. So if you prefer not to be seen on YouTube, don't activate your video. And then for YouTube viewers, after each session, please close the window and then open a new one for the next session. It has to do with the technical issues around recording on both Zoom and YouTube. But that will ensure that you don't miss anything. If you don't do that, you might miss out when the next session starts. So we have about 7 minutes before it begins. So I want to open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please use the raise hand function, and I will be happy to answer them. Okay, I see Caroline. Go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself now, Caroline.
Thank you. So I live with my family, and so I'm wondering whether the expectation is for us to maintain silence during meal times, and I have a teenager, so I'm not worried about the morning. But after 9, definitely there will be activity, and I'm happy to try to avoid speaking and interacting. So just some guidance with that, please.
Sure. I would say that the best thing to do is try to set some rules for yourself. You know, some retreats are silent, others aren't. So it's really what you feel able to do. You know, I would say the idea here is to try to recreate an in-person retreat as much as is possible. But of course, we all are doing this from our homes. So there are going to be situations like that. We're not going to achieve perfection with this. So I would say do the best you can. But it's not, you know, it's not required. Okay. And I see Jenny has a question. Go ahead, Jenny.
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I have a question regarding how to assign the breakup, the group. I mean.
Yep, good question. So the way the breakout groups will work is Zoom is, because we have a lot of participants, we've set it so that Zoom will automatically assign everyone to a breakout room. for those of you who haven't used breakout rooms before, when that happens, it's going to look like the meeting has ended. So it's going to look like you've been kicked out of the meeting, but don't worry, just wait. You'll automatically be logged in and you'll find yourself in the room. So yeah, it's a kind of interesting process when it happens. But as participants, you don't have to worry about it. The only thing to keep in mind is that we're doing our best to make sure that our facilitators get into the proper room. There might be a little bit of a delay while we sort facilitators into the room. So just wait for that person whose name is Abhi Support and a number to start talking. And if you don't see that person right away, don't worry about it. They're coming.
Okay, so I just wait, and the system will automatically show me that which group I'm in.
Exactly. You will automatically be put in a group.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Elena, go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you. Hi, Steve.
Hello.
Good evening, Bante. I just wanted to ask regarding papers and documents that sometimes Bante presents and for continuous study and review of the material. Is that going to be made available at any time?
I'm going to leave that to Bhikkhu Bodhi. If there are any documents that he wants to get out to all the participants, I will email them to you all. So we'll make sure that you get them, but I'm going to leave that to him.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Dayani, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Steve. Good evening. So, yeah, do I have to turn on the video?
You don't have to. If you'd like to, you can, but you don't have to.
Sure. Okay, maybe. Oh, okay. There he is. So a friend of mine who cannot join, she is asking how can she view the YouTube online?
The fastest way to get the link is to go to the BAUS homepage, and
Okay.
on the announcement about the Abhidhamma retreat, the YouTube link is there.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so it's just about 7 o'clock. I don't see any more hands raised. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bhikkhu Bodhi. Thank you all. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to make one more announcement. When you join, please use your real name, the one you registered with. If you haven't done it, email the tech email address and we will change it for you. And this is just for security reasons. So, and if you didn't do it tonight, it's not a big deal, but tomorrow, please log in with your real name. That's it. I'm going to turn it over to Bhikkhu Bodhi.
Am I set up properly?
You are. We can see you.
And do I have to do anything to get us on YouTube, or is somebody else handling that?
We've handled it.
Okay. Okay, since we'll be starting this retreat, and maybe over the last few hours, our minds have been excited and a bit agitated and restless. So let's just sit quietly for about 5 minutes just to settle the mind. And so take a comfortable sitting position. Let the mind drop all of its waves of thoughts and just settle into the body. And then let the mind just settle onto the process of in and out breathing. Just mindfully observing in breath and out breath. You can relax now and open your eyes. Okay, we will begin the retreat and this session in the traditional way with the verse of homage to the Buddha. And so we join the palms together and hold the palms in front of us. And then either observing a Buddha image, if you have one before you, or mentally visualizing one, we do the salutation, and I'll recite. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And so good evening, everybody. Good evening to some, good afternoon to others, perhaps good morning to still others. So welcome to the 2020 Abhidhamma retreat, which is being held through Chuangyan Monastery here in Carmel, New York. Now, over the years, beginning in the year 2013, I've been holding an annual Abhidhamma retreat over the Labor Day weekend. So from 2013 through 2016, I covered in sequence the chapters in the Abhidhammata Sangha, that is translated as the Comprehensive Manual of Abhidhamma. Then in the year 2017, I took the central or middle chapters of the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, which gives a different presentation, an alternative presentation on the topics treated in the Abhidhamma. So in 2017, we took chapter 14, which provides a very detailed analysis of the 5 aggregates. In 2018, I took chapters 15 and 16, which treat the 12 sense bases, the 18 elements, and the 4 noble truths. And then last year, in 2019, I took chapter 17, which provides a detailed explanation of paticca samuppada, dependent origination. And the topics of those chapters are said to constitute, in Pali, panya bhumi, which means the ground or soil of wisdom. So those are the topics that nurture the development of panya, insight, wisdom, the wisdom that understands the real nature of things. And now in this year's retreat, we're going to be dealing with the chapters, the final chapters of the Visuddhimagga, beginning with chapter 18. And those chapters deal thoroughly, systematically, comprehensively, some might say a little too comprehensively, with the development, the actual development of wisdom, emphasizing particularly the stages in the unfolding of insight wisdom. Okay, but I'm going to start explaining those chapters tomorrow morning. But in today's session, I want to give a broad overview of the general scheme that underlies the path of purification, the Visuddhimagga, and the main structure that the Visuddhimagga uses is called the 7 stages of purification, or sutta visuddhi in Pali. And it's because it uses the structure of these 7 purifications, or 7 stages of purification, that the work itself is called Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, or the path to purity. And so we find that these 7 stages of purification provide a very detailed account of the different stages that the practitioner goes through on the way to the attainment of the final goal of the Buddha's teaching, which is the attainment of liberation, or nibbana. But before I take the 7 stages, before I present this broad overview of the 7 stages, I want to spend some time based primarily on the suttas, not on the Abhidhamma itself, to devote some time to looking at the idea of stages of development in the Buddha's teaching. Because I think this is something very characteristic of the Buddha Dhamma, and it's a kind of feature that underlies virtually all forms of Buddhism throughout its historical development, whether it be in the Theravada school, Sarvastivada school, the different systems of Mahayana Buddhism, even Zen Buddhism, which presents itself as being without a form of practice, without conceptual schemes and verbal elaborations. When you get to see the works of the Zen masters, you see that they also lay out different stages of development. And so we're going to go back to the earlier sources, the sources of the Nikayas, and look at some of the schemes or systems or plans, or maybe we could call these blueprints of systematic sequential development through which the practitioner passes. And now I'm going to have to share my screen. And is this something that I will do myself? Okay.
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Let me just go back. Okay, let's. Okay, do you see the, we call this the menu or list of contents?
Yes.
Well, Friday evening. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the stages that are laid out in the suttas. And so I call this file Stages of Progress in the Suttas. And the most common, the most widespread, the most fundamental system of stages that we find in the sutta teaching and throughout the whole Buddhist tradition is that of 3 basic stages, which are sometimes called the 3 groups of practice. So we have the 3 groups in Pali are sila, samadhi, and panya, and these culminate in the attainment of the goal, which is vimutti, liberation. And so as an example, I take here a passage that occurs throughout the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. The Mahaparinibbana Sutta, this is the account of the last journey of the Buddha before, up to, and including his passing away. And so we see in the sutta that the Buddha is traveling from Rajagaha to Kusinara, the place where he will pass away. And at each stop along the way, we come across this repetitive passage, which says that the Blessed One often instructed the monks, such and such is virtuous behavior, such and such is concentration, such and such is wisdom. So this is sila, samadhi, and panya. And then he says, great is the fruit, great is the benefit of concentration when it is grounded upon and fully matured by virtuous behavior. Great is the fruit, great is the benefit of wisdom when it is grounded upon and fully matured by concentration. So here we have the three stages, sila, samadhi, panya, and then the culmination, the mind fully grounded upon and fully matured in wisdom is liberated from the taints, that is the primordial defilements of sensual lust, craving for existence, and ignorance. And then again, we have another sutta found in the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha, in a different way, emphasizes the importance of developing these three stages. So he says it's because of not understanding and penetrating noble, virtuous behavior, noble concentration, noble wisdom, and noble liberation that you and I have roamed and wandered, that is roamed and wandered in samsara, the cycle of repeated births, for such a long stretch of time. But now, speaking with reference to himself, he says, now that noble, virtuous behavior has been understood and penetrated, so too noble concentration has been understood and penetrated, noble wisdom, noble liberation have been understood and penetrated, and thus the craving for repeated existence has been cut off. The chain that binds me to existence has been destroyed. So now there is no more renewal of samsara, no more renewal of the round of repeated existence. So these are suttas which just lay out in very broad terms the three stages of training. But then I took another sutta which give definitions of these three stages of training. And here, the three stages, here, the three groups of practice are called trainings. And the Pali word that's used here is sika, the type of training. And the way the Buddha explains them here, because he's speaking to the monks, and so he defines them in ways that are pertinent to the training of the monk. And so he says, what are these three stages of training? The training, he calls it now the higher virtuous behavior. And so a prefix is used to indicate that this is not just the basic level of training, but it's a sort of more developed, more advanced type of training. So we have adisila, the higher virtuous training. And then instead of using the word samadhi, for some reason, the Buddha chose to use the word citta, which means mind. So this is the training in the higher mind. But what is being indicated is, in fact, samadhi, because samadhi, which we translate as concentration, means the concentration of the mind, the development of the mind, the unfolding of the potentials of the mind, to elevate the mind to higher levels of experience. So this is called adicitta. And then we have the third is called the training in the higher wisdom. Yeah, each of these is called a training. So now we come to the definitions of them. So what is the training in the higher virtuous behavior? And so the Buddha gives the definition. Here, a monk is virtuous, that is of good behavior, one who observes the rules of the monastic code. And then there's some other phrases used which just reinforce the point. And then he says, having undertaken the training rules, he trains in them. So that is the training in the higher virtuous behavior. And that name for that code of monastic rules, the word is the patimokkha. Okay, then what is the training in the higher mind? And here the text uses the formulas for the 4 jhanas. So the higher mind is explained as secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states of mind. The monk enters and dwells in the 4 jhanas. So that's the training in the higher mind. And this naturally will raise the question, which I'm not going to answer tonight, are the jhanas necessary to reach the goal of the teaching? I'm going to deal with that question tomorrow morning. Okay, then we have 2 suttas which give the definitions, and the suttas give different definitions of the training in the higher wisdom. So Anguttara Nikaya 3's number 89 explains the higher wisdom that the monk understands as it really is. This is dukkha, which we translate usually suffering. This is the origin of dukkha. This is its cessation. This is the path to its cessation. In other words, the training in the higher wisdom is the direct understanding, the experiential understanding of the 4 noble truths. Then the next sutta in the series explains the training in the higher wisdom in a somewhat different way. It says, here, with the destruction of the taints, this is the asavas. Again, these are what I call the primordial defilements. A monk realizes for himself with direct knowledge in this very life the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and having entered upon it, he dwells in it. So there is a difference in the implication of these 2 definitions of the training in the higher wisdom. In Sutta number 89, what is indicated by the training in the higher wisdom is the wisdom that is possessed by a disciple who is still in training. This is one who is called technically a seka, a disciple in training, and it usually implies someone on the first 3 of the 4 stages of realization. That is, this is the kind of insight or wisdom that marks the breakthrough to the stage of stream entry, the first stage of realization. So the stream enterer, through the development of insight, gains the direct understanding, not just an intellectual understanding, but the experiential understanding of all 4 noble truths. And that kind of insight or understanding persists from the first stage to the second stage to the third stage. That is from the stage of stream enterer to the stage of once returner to the stage of non-returner. Okay, the disciple in training continues to develop that wisdom. And when that wisdom reaches its culmination, then there comes the highest stage of wisdom, which is the wisdom that brings the destruction of the defilements and the attainment of arhatship. So that is what is indicated by this kind of wisdom. This is the wisdom, trying to get this. So this is the wisdom of a disciple who has completed the training, who has eradicated the taints, the asavas, and has thereby gained the taintless or undefiled liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and has entered in it and dwells in it. So this is the wisdom of the Arahat, of one who is finished with the training. Okay, so this is the broadest scheme of stages that we find in the suttas, the three broad stages of sila, samadhi, panya, culminating in vimutti, in liberation. Okay, but we also find in the suttas a more detailed account of these stages of training. Now I have to open another file. So there are various presentations of this more detailed course of training. And I've taken the version that we find in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, in Sutta number 39, the greater discourse given at the city of Asapura. So in this sutta, we always begin with the training in sila, in virtuous behavior. But here we have a finer differentiation of the stages of training. So here we begin with a sense, is called in Pali, the words used, hiri and ottappa, which we call as a sense of, maybe a sense of moral shame and fear of wrongdoing, or maybe call this moral dread. So this is the hiri, is the quality that makes one reluctant, hesitant to engage in immoral conduct from a sense of one's own self-respect, out of a desire to preserve the integrity of one's own character. And its counterpart, ottappa, is the quality that makes one refrain from wrongdoing, from fear of the consequences, either the consequences that are visible in this present life, for example, being blamed and criticized by others, being exposed by others and humiliated in public, or the consequences of acquiring unwholesome karma that will ripen in states of suffering in the future. So those two factors working together are the sort of motivations for undertaking virtuous behavior. And then here we have the virtuous behavior itself distinguished into four types: purified bodily conduct, purified verbal conduct, purified mental conduct. And other suttas that I won't go into here analyze this in greater detail. And then the last one is purified livelihood. That is earning one's living by a right livelihood which applies also to monastics. And if you want to see a finer explanation of these, you can look in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 27 and number 51. But that goes into more detail than we need right now. Okay, then before we come to the training in concentration or samadhi, the text inserts a number of additional types of training which form a kind of bridge connecting virtuous conduct with the practice leading to concentration, to samadhi. So here we have restraint of the senses, not letting the senses run outwardly and get entangled in attractive and alluring sensory objects, which inflame either sensual lust, aversion and ill will, or intoxication and greater delusion. Being moderate in eating so that one does not become intoxicated with the taste of delicious food and doesn't overeat so that one becomes lackadaisical and slothful, but one eats enough to maintain one's health and vigor, but not overeating. Then wakefulness, which means devoting periods during the day and the night to the practice of mental cultivation, meditation, and then in all of one's day-to-day activities, doing them with proper mindfulness and clear comprehension, clear knowing of what one is doing. So when one is grounded upon purified conduct and one develops these practices in one's day-to-day life, then one is gradually building up the momentum, the foundation, establishing the foundation that is going to support the practice of meditation aimed at samadhi. And so to develop samadhi, the initial stage, one goes off into a secluded place where one has the time and leisure to devote oneself to meditation practice. And then one applies the appropriate methods or remedies or antidotes to overcoming the 5 hindrances. Those are the hindrances of sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse and doubt. And then after abandoning the hindrances, then one enters into the 4 jhanas. And so this constitutes the training in samadhi or concentration. And then we come to the training in panya or wisdom. And in this version that we find in the middle-length discourses, we find 2 types of knowledge which are really not strictly necessary, but they are considered, we might call these adornments of a highly accomplished meditator who masters the jhanas. So these 2 auxiliary types of knowledge is the first, the recollection of past lives, the ability to remember one past life, even 2, 3, 4, even hundreds of past lives. And then the divine eye, which enables one to see how other sentient beings pass away and take rebirth in accordance with their karma. So these are 2 sort of super knowledges, which in a way they're not critically necessary for the attainment of liberation. But in this version that we find in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha often includes them, probably because well, actually my personal theory is that the Majjhima Nikaya, some of these suttas are intended as the Buddha's response to the teaching of the Brahmins. And the Brahmins, for them, the key to wisdom was mastery of their three collections of scriptures called the three Vedas. And so for the Brahmins, one who masters the Vedas is held to be the pinnacle of wisdom. And so the Buddha's answer to the three Vedas of the Brahmins was these three kinds of higher knowledge, which are called Vija. So the word Veda and Vija are both based upon the same root, the root vid, which means to know. But the crucial knowledge that constitutes wisdom, the knowledge that culminates in liberation, this is the knowledge of the destruction of the asavas. Let's use the word taints, as I used previously. And so this includes the stages of insight knowledge culminating in the attainment of arhatship. Or the attainment of arhatship. The stage of final liberation. Okay, so this is quite an elaborate map of the stages of the path as we find in the suttas. And we could see here, as I pointed out, we have the three main stages: sila, samadhi, and the three higher knowledge, which we could say constitute panya. Okay, but now we're going to look at another scheme that we find rather strangely only in one sutta in the entire Sutta Pitaka. And that sutta occurs in the Majjhima Nikaya in sutta number 24. This sutta is called the Rata Vinita Sutta, the discourse on the relay of chariots. But even though the scheme is found only in one sutta in the Sutta Pitaka, it is this scheme of the 7 stages of purification that forms the basis for the Visuddhimagga. And that will be the scheme with which we'll be concerned in the rest of this retreat. So let us look at the sutta source for the scheme, the Rata Vinita Sutta. Okay, so here I didn't include the introductory parts of the sutta, but the background to the sutta is, okay, the sutta itself would unfold as a dialogue between Venerable Sariputta, who is the Buddha's disciple foremost in wisdom, and another monk named Puna Mantani Putta. Now, in the early part of the sutta, Venerable Sariputta hears praises spoken about Puna Mantani Putta, He's never met him before, but the other monks praise Puna. And then Sariputta expresses the wish, the hope, maybe one day I'll get a chance to meet Puna Mantani Putta. And so one day the monks tell Sariputta that Puna Mantani Putta has arrived now in our monastery, and he's gone off into a certain grove to practice meditation for the day. And so Sariputta follows Puna Mantani Putta. He sees him, he follows them, and he sees Puna Mantani Putta sitting in meditation during the day. And so Sariputta sits down and also enters into meditation. And so they spend the afternoon, each one under his own tree, sitting in meditation. Okay, then when evening comes, then Sariputta emerges from meditation. He goes to Puna, exchanges greetings with him, and then he asks Puna, he says, are you living the holy life under our blessed one, under the Buddha? You know, at first, of course, he knows that this is Puna Mantani Putta. Of course, the monks pointed him out, but this is a polite way of opening the conversation. And Sariputta is, interestingly, he doesn't reveal his own identity. And Puna has never met Sariputta before, so he doesn't realize that this is the great disciple of the Buddha, Sariputta. He thinks this is just another monk who has come to speak to me. And so Puna says, yes, friend. And then Sariputta starts to ask Puna Mantani Putta some questions. And so he says, is the holy life lived under the Buddha for the sake of purification of virtue? And Puna says, no, friend. Then is it for the sake of purification of mind? No, friend. Is it for the sake of purification of view? No, friend. Is it for the sake of purification by overcoming doubt? No, friend. Is it for the sake of purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path, that the holy life is lived under the Blessed One? No, friend. Is it for the sake of purification by knowledge and vision of the way or of progress, that the holy life is lived under the Blessed One? No, friend. Then is it for the sake of purification by knowledge and vision that the holy life is lived under the Blessed One? And again, the answer is no, friend. So you could see that here we have 7 stages of purification. Virtue is one, of mind, of view, by overcoming doubt, by knowledge and vision of what is the path and not the path, purification by knowledge and vision of the way, purification by knowledge and vision itself. So those are the 7 stages of purification. Okay, then Sariputta repeats all of the 7 stages. And then he says, for the sake of what is the holy life lived under the Blessed One? So what is the final goal for living the spiritual life under the Buddha? And then Puna Mantani Putta says, it is for the sake of final nibbana without clinging. Well, we could say the state of final nibbana through the eradication of clinging, that the holy life is lived under the Blessed One. So that is the final goal. And the 7 stages of purification are a sequence of stages that culminate in that goal. Okay, then Sariputta asks whether each of these stages of purification can be identified with final nibbana without clinging. And of course, Puna says no, 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 no. So none of the stages is final nibbana itself. So we could skip through some of these. Stages. And then Puna is going to use a simile to illustrate how the stages, the 7 stages, operate in relation to the final goal. How these stages are not ends in themselves. So the final goal is not just to reach any of these stages, not even the stage of purification by knowledge and vision. And yet without these 7 stages of purification, it is not possible to reach the final goal. And so Puna devises the simile. So he says, suppose that King Pasenadi of Kosala. Kosala is a state in northern India corresponding roughly to Uttar Pradesh today. And so the king at that time was named Pasenadi, and Savatthi was the capital, and he had another palace and another sort of outpost in the city called Saketa. And so I guess he would be often traveling from Kosala to Saketa, just like somebody would say a political leader might be traveling often, say somebody, the senator from New York State would often be traveling between Washington and New York City. Okay, so he wants to travel from Savatthi to Saketa. And so the way he travels is that 7 chariots are kept ready for him. And so he leaves Savatthi, he leaves from his palace, he gets onto the first chariot, and he travels a certain distance, and they don't want to exhaust the horse. And so it is when the horse has traveled a certain distance, then the chariot comes to a stop, and then the king gets off the first chariot, gets onto the second chariot, and then he travels some distance further. Then he gets onto the third chariot, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. Finally, he gets onto the 7th chariot, and from the 7th chariot, finally, he arrives at his palace in Saketa. And so, applying the simile, the Punamantani explains, just as we have the first chariot leads to the second to the third, and so on till we get the 6th leads to the 7th, and the 7th chariot takes him to the palace door. So purification of virtue takes one to purification of mind. Purification of mind takes one to purification of you. Purification of you takes one to purification by overcoming doubt. This one takes one to purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and not the path. That takes one to purification by knowledge and vision of the way. Purification by knowledge and vision of the way takes one to purification by knowledge and vision. And it is by purification, by knowledge and vision, that one reaches final nibbana without clinging. And it is for the sake of final nibbana without clinging that the spiritual life is lived under the Buddha, the Blessed One. And then just the ending of this is quite charming. Okay, when the discussion is finished, then Sariputta asks Punamantani Putta, even though he knows who it is, but this is a polite way of finding out. So he says, what is your name and how are you addressed? And so he says, my name is Puna and my friends in the holy life call me Mantani Putta. And then Sariputta praises Punamantani Putta for his answer. And then Punamantani Putta, he doesn't know at all who Sariputta is. So he asks this other monk who's been questioning him, what is your name and how are you known? And then he says, my name is Upatissa, that is his proper name. And my friends in the spiritual life know me as Sariputta. And Punamantani Putta says, truthfully, he says, indeed, I did not know that I was speaking with the Venerable Sariputta, the disciple who is like the teacher himself. If I had known that you were the Venerable Sariputta, I would not have spoken so much. Okay, and then he continues to praise Sariputta. Okay, now what I find both strange and interesting is that we have this discussion between these two very eminent disciples about 7 stages of purification, and both apparently understand what is meant by them. And yet we don't find these 7 stages of purification laid out any place else in the Sutta Pitaka, with one little exception, which I'm going to come to. But when we look, if we were going to find them any place in the Sutta Pitaka, any place else, you would expect to find them in the Anguttara Nikaya, which is arranged according to groups, numerical groups. You would expect to find in the group of 7s, the chapter of the 7s, a number of suttas which speak about the 7 stages of purification. But we don't find any such suttas there. And so my suspicion, maybe I will be tried in some of the more conservative or orthodox Theravadan circles, but I have a suspicion that the sutta comes from a somewhat later period, maybe a few generations after the time of the Buddha himself, in which the stages of progress were being elaborated in greater detail by the Sangha. And to give this scheme greater authority and greater validity and more widespread, and to promote its widespread recognition, the scheme was framed as emerging in a discussion between these 2 great disciples of the Buddha. Okay, now we do find in the Sutta Pitaka yeah. We do find what can be a kind of progenitor for these 7 stages of purification mentioned in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Fours, And this is sutta number 194. And here it's not the Buddha speaking actually, but it's the Venerable Ananda speaking. And he says that there are these 4 factors of striving for purification that the Blessed One, the Buddha, has rightly expounded for the purity of beings, for the realization of Nibbana. And then he defines them as the factor of striving for purification of virtuous behavior, the factor of striving for purification of mind. And then we don't find the third one is not purification of wisdom, but it's called purification of view, which corresponds to the third purification in the Rata Vinita Sutta, the third of the 7 stages. And then the 4th factor of purification is the striving for purification of liberation, which is not included in this explicitly in the 7 stages of purification. And then we have definitions of these 4 types of purification. So purification of virtuous behavior. So this is what we've already come across. So the monk is virtuous. He dwells restraint by the rules of the monastic life. And then the effort for that purification, that is the factor of striving for purification of virtuous behavior. Then the purification of mind is explained by way of the 4 jhanas. The purification of view is explained as the understanding of the 4 noble truths. So this is like the first of the 3 types of training in the higher wisdom, which we saw when we went through the 3 stages of training. And then we have the striving for purification of liberation. So liberation is the fruit or result of the training in sila, samadhi, and panya. And so this is explained a little more detail, that the monk, through these training in virtuous behavior, training of mind, and purification of view, detaches his mind from the things that cause attachment and emancipates his mind from the things that bring emancipation, and thereby reaches right liberation. So this is purification of liberation. So those are the 4 types of purification that one finds in the suttas. And again, not spoken as such by the Buddha, but by Ananda. But this could be like an early form that provided a kind of nucleus or seed for the 7 stages of purification. But then we find in the Digha Nikaya, the last sutta in the Digha Nikaya, called the Dasuttara Sutta, 9 factors of striving for purification. So this sutta seems to be, I have the impression, a little bit late, though it's ascribed to Sariputta. So either it could be late or it could be an elaboration developed by Sariputta himself, in which we have now 9 types of purification. So here we have the 7 purifications of virtuous behavior, purity of mind, of view, of overcoming doubt, knowledge and vision of the path and not path, knowledge and vision of the way, and knowledge and vision. And then we have added to this purity of wisdom, which seems a little bit strange because the term knowledge and vision usually is equated with wisdom. So this seems a bit redundant. And then we have purity of liberation. And the commentary gives an explanation of this that is attempting to square the scheme of 9 types of purification with the system of 7 purifications that we find in the Ratavinita Sutta and in the Visuddhimagga. So what the commentary says, maybe I should not go into this, but anyway, it identifies the wisdom, what's called the purity of wisdom, with the wisdom in the fruit of arhatship, and the purity of liberation with the liberation in the fruit of arhatship. Okay, now I said that the 7 stages of purification form the foundation for the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification. But what happens in the path of purification in the Visuddhimagga is that the 7 stages of purification then become correlated or integrated with another scheme or system that developed over time, which lays out in greater or finer detail the stages of wisdom, the different stages of wisdom and insight that unfold as one is engaged in the 3rd stage of training, in the development of panya, the development of wisdom. So let us take first a broad look at that, which we find in the comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma. Here I present it, or here we present it in one way. Here we have the 7 stages of purification with the practices involved in each one. Are you seeing what's on the screen from the compendium? Just to make sure.
Yes.
Okay. So we have the purification of virtue, the 4 kinds of purified virtue, purification of mind, defined as access and absorption concentration, then purification of view, explained as a particular type of knowledge that arises. We're going to come to this in detail tomorrow. The purification by overcoming, basically this will be understanding the characteristics of mental and material phenomena, then the purification by overcoming doubt as the discernment of the conditions for mental and material phenomena. And this will be the understanding of dependent origination. Then we come to the knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path. And this gets to be connected with certain other types of knowledge that we're going to come to over the next few days. Then knowledge and vision of the way becomes elaborated by way of the unfolding of the stages of insight and knowledge. So these are the knowledges that, again, that we'll be coming to in the course of this retreat. And then between 6 and 7, the 6th and 7th purifications, we come to a certain stage of knowledge called change of lineage, by which one makes the transition from the stages of mundane insight to the supermundane or world transcending realization of nibbana. And then the seventh purification, purification by knowledge and vision, is identified with the knowledge of the four supermundane or world transcending paths. So this is a broad overview of the terrain that we're going to be traveling over the next 3 days, a kind of map of the layout of the land. But there's still another classification that gets integrated into this scheme. So I've prepared another map which brings them all together in a somewhat different way. And I hope you're not finding this confusing. I think by the time we get finished with the retreat, this will become much clearer. So here, you see the Visuddhimagga will distinguish 3 stages of, called the 3 types of full understanding. 3 types of parinya is the word translated full understanding. Okay, so before we get to that, we have as the starting point purification of virtue, purification of mind. Then we come to full understanding of the known. And under this, we have purification of view, which is the understanding the characteristics of mental and material phenomena, and purification by overcoming doubt. That's the discernment or understanding of the conditions for mental and material phenomena. Then the next type of full understanding is called full understanding by investigation. And then we have certain types of knowledge are included here. And under this reaches its peak with the purification by knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path. And then the third full understanding is full understanding by abandoning. And under this, we have, well, first we have a mundane aspect to full understanding by abandoning. That includes the purification by knowledge and vision of the way with the various insight knowledges that constitute purification by knowledge and vision of the way. And finally, we have full understanding by abandoning, which is the supermundane abandoning. And that is purification by knowledge and vision, which is equated with the knowledge in the 4 world transcending paths. So this is a broad, as I said, a very detailed map of the terrain we'll be covering, and you'll be seeing this in greater detail in the course of this retreat. We have some time for me to take some questions, but first I want to take just a 2 or 3 minute break, and then I'll come back to take those questions. Okay, I should say about the questions that are asked. It could be that you'll be asking questions about some of the knowledges and stages that I just treated in a very general way this evening. If you have those questions, if I see that I'm going to be dealing with those issues over the course of the retreat, then I will just have to say, hold the question, since the question will almost certainly be answered as I go on with the elaborations. Okay, so let us see, how do I take the questions?
If you click on the participants button at the bottom, you can see who has their hand raised. And if you hover over their name, you can ask them to unmute.
Okay. I see an Abhi support 6, Kaiti.
Hi, Bante. Yeah, I have one question. It might be answered later on, but I just want to ask, does one need to reach fourth jhana to attain the higher knowledge, such as the relocation of past lives?
Okay, I could answer that question.
Okay, thank you, Bante.
Okay, according to the scheme in the, let's say in the way it's presented in the suttas and in the Visuddhimagga, in order for us to have mastery over the knowledge of past lives, one uses the fourth jhana as the basis for gaining those knowledges, sort of deliberately through a deliberate act of turning the mind back to recover those buried memories from past lives. But I think it's not necessarily the case that for those recollections to arise, one needs the fourth jhana. I've heard of cases of individuals who spontaneously will gain some recollection of past lives. And perhaps it's possible to get some knowledges based on lower degrees of samadhi or concentration, but to have an ability to recover that knowledge just through determination and an act of will, the fourth jhana is the basis for those knowledges. Okay, Gita. And when you, I think when I call your name, then you would unmute yourself. Okay.
Thank you, Bante. Nice to see you. Thank you for teaching us. I have a question for you. You know, all this material that you have that you're showing us on the slides, can it be made available online so we can print them? Because I'm making notes.
Yeah,
so
I will be sending this material to Steve and Kaiti, and they could make it available for
everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank you. Be safe.
Okay, Sud.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable Sir. Appreciate your teaching today. Just wanted to ask you, so with the purification of view and purification of mind, oh, sorry, let me stop my video there. All right. So purification of view and purification of mind, that leads to the purification of view, or is it purification of view coming from reading the suttas, and purification of virtue is following like 10 wholesome actions and things?
No. You'll see the meaning of purification of view tomorrow. It's not comes from reading the suttas, but it's a stage of experiential knowledge that arises. Of course, the suttas will provide a template for gaining the purification of view, but it's not just something that comes from study and reflection alone.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yolan?
Bante, this is wonderful. I'm so happy that I'm here. I have my question. My question is, you mentioned the Abhidhamma and the mental and material phenomena, but I couldn't get it fast enough where you said it was located. You mentioned the mental and material phenomena. And I also noticed that it was in a lot of the material. So, but you said where it was, but it's supposed to be in the Abhidhamma?
I'm not quite sure of the question. The
Okay,
mental and material phenomena are not in a, those are the, we'll say those are the constituents of experience. It's not that they're in a particular text. Of course, they're mentioned in the text.
well, how are they related to what we were talking about today? Because I remembered you bring it up right after we talked to the Visuddhimagga, right after you spoke about the Visuddhimagga, as
Yeah.
also the stages of purification, and then there were 7 stages, and then you mentioned the Abhidhamma and the mental and material
Oh,
phenomena.
I think what I said is that purification of view,
Yes.
which is the third purification, that this involves like the contemplation of and the definition or distinguishing of mental and material phenomena.
Oh, that's
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be
nice.
dealing with tomorrow morning.
Oh boy, I'll wait.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
you'll get
Oh,
that tomorrow morning.
thank you. I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay. Olivia.
Thank you, Bhikkhu Bodhi. I just wanted to know, get an idea in my mind about the chronology. When you refer to the fact that the Visuddhimagga had the 7 stages noted, and then there were 2 additional ones compared with the Abhidhamma. Can you just give me an idea as to when the Abhidhamma was actually put down in writing?
Yeah,
Please?
first, yeah, the 2 additional, I think what I said is that the 7 stages one finds in the Rata Vinita Sutta, that is the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 24. And those 7 stages form the foundation for the scheme of the Visuddhimagga. But then in the last sutta of the Digha Nikaya, Sutta number 34, it has a scheme of 9 stages of purification. So it has those 7 stages, and then it adds 2 more stages, the purification of wisdom and the purification of liberation.
Okay, I get it. I got
Yes.
my notes down wrong a little bit.
Yeah, this has
Thank
nothing to
you.
do with the Abhidhamma. This is a difference in presentations in the suttas between a 7-fold scheme and a 9-fold scheme, which adds 2 more stages to this original 7.
Okay, thank you very much, Bhikkhu Bodhi.
Okay, Yudi,
Yes.
the Ortega, yeah.
Hi. Hello, Bhikkhu Bodhi. So I'm kind of new to the Abhidhamma studies. So I was wondering, what is the differences? I mean, what is the purpose of the Abhidhamma opposed to the other 4 baskets? You know, because I've heard that Abhidhamma is not the real teachings of the Buddha or something.
Yeah, well, first, maybe I have to say, maybe that's too big a question for me to take in the question period, yeah.
No problem.
But if you find on YouTube, you go to my Abhidhamma lectures
Yes.
from the year 2013, and you take the first lecture from that year, and then I dealt in detail with that question.
Okay.
So it took a whole lecture to basically to deal with that question.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that. That'll be great.
Okay, is this Hannah? Hannah?
Yeah, can you hear me? My name's Hannah.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay.
I have a question about, oh, I think it's sharing my screen. I have a question.
I lost your voice.
Hi, I think you can hear me now.
Okay.
I'm coming here from a Vipassana background. And I found that over the last couple of years, my meditation has become really stagnant. I'm wondering how or what role you think learning about the suttas could have in, I guess, progress along the path. Have you found that learning about the suttas and studying to be important in that way?
Yeah, I think definitely it's important to learn, at least to get a basic knowledge of the teachings of the suttas. It doesn't have to become a scholar, but one should, I say, become acquainted with a core group of suttas that serve as the guide and the foundation for practice.
Okay.
Yeah, what I recommend for people would be a group of suttas from the middle length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya.
Right.
Particularly
Just because
maybe
I have found that the Vipassana practice is very much on the technique itself.
Yeah.
By S.N. Goenka, without going into any sort of anything more scholarly than that. And I think that's maybe why I'm finding it a little bit mechanical, my meditation practice.
Yeah, I'd say it would be useful to look and maybe if you have like limited time, the first 30 suttas from the Majjhima Nikaya, but put aside the first sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, which is very difficult and not immediately clear. First 30 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and then in the Majjhima Nikaya, the last, the ones in the 140s, from
So
140.
the first 30 and the 140s. Okay.
Yeah, like 143 to the end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we could take maybe one last question. It would be Young.
Hi, Bante.
Yeah.
I have a question about the simile of seven relay chariot.
Right.
Does it imply you need to take up the training only in this order, from virtue to concentration, and then view, and so on?
That's what it is implying, but I'm going to deal with some of the knotty issues that arise from that scheme tomorrow, the first session tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think now I don't see any more hands, so we can take a little break and come back at 8:30. So we'll take, I have 8:23, so at 8:30, we'll come back and then we'll do the closing meditation session and the sharing of the merits. Okay, are we ready to resume?
I think so.
Okay, so we're going to do now a closing meditation for the evening. And so we could take your meditation posture, whichever way you feel most comfortable. And in the posture, the most important aspect is to keep the torso, the upper part of the body, to keep it straight and upright, but not stiff or rigid. Let the weight of the torso be supported by the hips and the buttocks, not by tensing the muscles of the back. Put the hands on the lap, right hand over the left hand, thumbs lightly touching. Nose should be perpendicular with the navel. Mouth closed with the tongue against the palate. Eyes lightly closed. The chin pulled in just a very slight angle. And then first settle into the felt sense of the body. Just let the mind spread throughout the body and take in the body as a kind of global whole. And now we're going to do the meditation of loving kindness. So let the mind settle in the region of the heart. The heart is the seat of the positive emotions, like love and compassion. And so first we do the loving kindness to ourselves. So bring up the image of yourself as though you're standing about 5 meters in front of you, smiling and happy. Then generate the wish, the thought, the wish from the heart. May I be well, happy, and safe. Do this over and over for a few minutes, using the words to generate the feeling that corresponds to the words. So you're stirring up, arousing a warm, and sincere wish for your own well-being, happiness, and safety. Safety from harm and danger. Okay, now you bring to mind your loved ones, a few loved ones, close family members or dear friends. Invite them into the range of your heart. And generate towards them again that warm, gentle, generous, flowing feeling of loving kindness, using the words, the phrases, may my loved ones, my dear ones, may they be well, may they be happy in mind, may they be safe from all harm and danger. So do this now on your own for a few minutes. Okay, now you spread the mind more widely to take in the people in your neighborhood. If you're living in an apartment building, you could take in the people in that building. If you have a house on the street, you take the people living on that street. Or it could be people that you interact with regularly but have no close personal relationship with, like colleagues at work. So we just call these, we'll call them the neighbors, and bring them into the range of your heart and generate the deep, sincere wish. May all of my neighbors be well. May they all be happy. May they all be safe, safe from harm and suffering. And particularly in this time of the COVID pandemic, wishing them to be free from the illness. Okay, now extend your mind even further. Extend it to your entire country, whatever country you're living in. Take in all of the human inhabitants of that country. Men, women, children, all human beings just like yourself, wishing to be well, happy, and safe. And so generate the wish, the deep, warm wish from the springs of the heart. May everyone in my country be well. May they be happy. May they be safe. Safe from harm, from danger. Okay, now you expand the mind, the range of the mind still further from your own country to take in the entire human population of the earth, all human beings on this planet, whatever their country, nationality, race, ethnicity, religion, all human beings just like yourself, wanting to be well, happy, and safe. And so generate to all human beings the wish, may they all be well, may they all be happy in mind, may they all be safe from harm and danger. Okay, then last, we extend the range of the mind still further to encompass all sentient beings. First, all of the sentient beings on this planet. So we include the animals along with humans, and then all sentient beings throughout the universe, and in all the different planes of existence, from the heavenly planes to the ghostly planes, the lowest worlds, sending the wish that all beings be well in body and mind, that they all be happy, that they be free from all, that they all be safe, safe from harm and danger. you continue spreading the loving kindness. And I'm going to chant now the verses for sharing the merits from our learning and practice this evening. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya bhavagopadaya vici hetato etantare satakayupapanna rupya rupicha asanya sanino dukkha pumuchantu pusantu nibuting. Okay, now you say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, let us see. Okay, so tomorrow we join again and we start the first session tomorrow at 9:20 a.m. for the morning meditation. And then the first lecture session will be from 10 to 11:20 tomorrow morning. And I want to explain that when I have the in-person Abhidhamma retreat here at the monastery, usually we have 2 lecture sessions in the morning, 2 lecture sessions in the afternoon, each one an hour, and then another session in the evening. But first of all, since we're doing this program online, we want to bring in people from other parts of the country and maybe even other countries in the world. Of course, we can't accommodate everybody in the world, but at least we try to accommodate the people from California who want to join, and they are 3 hours behind us. So if I started at 9 a.m., it would be a little bit difficult for them. So they could join, even if they have difficulty joining the first meditation session, but they could join the first teaching session at our 10 a.m., which will be 7 a.m. for them. And then also, when giving the class to a computer screen or to people through a computer screen, it creates a little bit of an odd feeling. Whereas when I'm lecturing or teaching people sitting in front of me, I get a certain human feedback. And so it's more invigorating. And so in this way, instead of having 2 hour sessions, morning and afternoon, in each period, morning and afternoon, we have a session of an hour, 20 minutes each. Okay, so thank you all for joining and hope you get a good rest tonight and hope to see you again tomorrow morning.